Hey everybody, so I am back for another Heresy Hump Day. It is that time of the week, and this week I have a little bit of a fall episode. It has been getting chilly here in Alberta. You can feel the cold nip in the air. It's not the first week, but it definitely is feeling like that. Kids are back in school. They have been for about a week or so. Just lots of reasons, and I'm just going to do a couple of topics that just sort of or been spurred on by the fall weather and entering the fall season. Topics this week, I don't typically dedicate a topic to a alcohol sponsor, but I do want to talk a little bit about the sponsored scotch tonight. And so that's going to be the first topic of the evening, in addition to showing what I've got here. And I'm going to be doing a table update, but the table update is going to have a little bit of a discussion associated with it. Has a little bit to do with the fall, and so that topic, that's going to be almost a full topic tonight. And then as far as a discussion topic, I have one main discussion topic after that, and it has nothing to do with the fall, and it's going to be around villains and cinema. And so that will be the third sort of topic for this Heresy Hump Day. So, without further ado, we'll start the first topic, which is actually directly related to the sponsor for the alcohol sponsor for the day. So, what I have here is Stronachie, which is a scotch that is a 10-year blend, matured in oak. This is distilled at the Ben Rinnes Distillery, Scotland, of course. And it's a small batch release, is what it says. It's bottled by A.D. Rattray Limited, established 1868. Now, I'm not an expert on Stronachie, but the story behind this is that I've kind of mentioned this before. I've never had this on the channel, but I referenced it a long time ago. I think before the Heresy Hump days, when I used to do Q&As, I talked about this. But Stronachie is the first scotch that I ever had that kind of got me into drinking scotch. Up until that point, I'd really only tried Glenfiddich 12-year, which is a fairly common scotch. I mean, it's something you can find in a hotel refrigerator bar, in a little bottle. It's just one of those common ones. And even to this day, I don't mind a 12-year Glenfiddich in water. It's not the most refined taste, for a scotch, but it's not bad now that I kind of appreciate scotch more. I can appreciate it. But when I first had it, I didn't really like it that much. For it to be the first one for me to try, I didn't really like it that much. And I kind of thought, well, what is it with people talking about scotch and everybody, so many people liking this, what is it to this? I mean, and so when I had the Glenfiddich, I just couldn't see it. And so I thought there has to be something more to this, because I saw all these bottles, you go to the liquor store and there's all these old bottles and all these different kinds of things. And so I was in the liquor store, and I ended up, was just staring at the stuff, and I guess an individual came over and said, can I help you with something? Are you looking for something in particular? And I just said, well, I just said what I just said to you, you all, just that sort of experience that I had. And I was kind of curious about trying something a bit smoother. And so he showed me, he actually let me taste some Stronachie. So it turned out to be a salesman. And they had a number of product that they were bringing in, and they said, well, have you ever tried this one? And they actually had a sort of little tasting station not far from where I was standing, and they just said, well, why don't you try this? And I tried it, and I said, this is actually pretty good. I actually like this. And so that's been a while. I mean, we're talking, I'm going to say around 10, in the 10-year area, 8 to 10 years area. It's been a while since I started drinking scotch, so that's how long it's been. Now, I had, over my time of drinking scotch since then, I probably only had 2 to 3 bottles over those 10 years, maybe, and it's been a while. I wouldn't even say that at this point. There was a time when I would have said it's my favorite Scotch. At this point, it's more like my first Scotch that was a favorite, is a favorite. Maybe not my absolute favorite now. Now, I haven't had it in enough time that I'm actually going to have some more with you guys tonight, just to sort of taste it and just see how it stands up compared to the first time I had it, and since having lots of Scotch since then. The one thing I would say, too, is that it's a little misleading, and I still am a little confused, but I think I mentioned on the channel when I was describing it last time that it's actually produced by Dewar's. Now, that isn't actually accurate. The story, as it goes, is that at one point there was a Stronachie distillery in Scotland a long time ago, and it was sort of either destroyed or let go. And at one point there were only 2 bottles of the original distillery left. And someone got the ability to actually get and decant a little bit to be able to replicate the formula. And so they did that. And the company, I was looking at my iPad here, it's actually a combination name for the company. It's called Dewar's Rat Ray, because 2 individuals, one, I think his name is Andrew Dewar, and the other it's called Dewar Rat Ray. It's a Dewar Rat Ray Scotch. They produce a few unique single malt scotches. And as far as I can tell, quickly looking into it, Dewar Rat Ray, this combination, because there's a gentleman named Rat Ray and a gentleman named Dewar that combined to create this little company that does this. They, as I understand it, don't necessarily have anything to do with Dewar's, the big Scotch that everybody kind of knows about. It's sort of like of the level of Glenfiddich in its production. Now, I could be wrong. Somebody might chime in and say, well, no, actually, that is the same Dewar. I just quickly looked, and I could not find any direct reference that the 2 were related. And so I was kind of misled myself on that when I was looking at it, because when I see the word Dewar and I see Scotch, I think of that big company. So they are actually their own sort of company. So, I'm going to open this up. And I'm going to have trouble opening it, of course. Alright, here we go. Alrighty. So, one of the things about Scotch with the fall and winter and things, I don't really drink Scotch during the summer. I like it as, it's a cozy drink for me. I love it in the colder months. Now, where I live in Canada, it gets nippy and cold for a good portion of the year. So I'm not limited to 3 to 4 months in my Scotch drinking. I still drink Scotch majority of the year because of the fact that it's chilly and cold majority of the year here. So, but I don't drink it during the summer. So I have already, since the cold hit, dipped into the Scotch prior to this episode. But this is still really early in the Scotch drinking season. I think this is my 2nd Scotch of the season. So that is one of the reasons why I'm drinking Scotch tonight on the show, and I'm featuring Stronachie, Heresy Productions' first, or just Palmer's first Scotch ever. And let's see how it holds up. Oh, they also make a premium, by the way, and I didn't even know that, because I've always just had the regular. This is the 10-year and the regular. It's still small batch, it's single malt, but they do make a more premium. I wanted the one that I started with when I bought it, and so that's what I picked up. So let's see. No, it's actually, it is still a nice one. Now, this is only 10-year, as I mentioned. You know, this is not even 12, which is typically what I would get, like single malt, but 16, 18 are common for good long-aged scotches. I would say that it's nice and smooth. It probably is a very good introductory scotch if somebody wants to try a nice scotch and something that they're not going to break the bank but enjoy. But I would say that the complexities, without going into them, of the various kind of things like peaty and this and that, oaky and all that stuff, I would say the complexity is not high up there. So if you're wanting to try one that has like a lot of this, flavor, this is not that. It's like a very nice, smooth, middle-of-the-road scotch, I would say, with not too much in one area that's going to stand out to be somebody's favorite because of that, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, not bad, actually. So, okay, well, I am going to go to the table update, which is the next topic for the evening, because it's not just showing what I'm doing tonight, but it's talking a little bit about why I'm choosing this next project, and it also kind of has to do with the fall. And so, with that, we'll go to the table, and I'll give you a little bit of a hint. So you guessed it, it's time for some French Indian War, musket and tomahawk, sharp practice, those kind of things. It is, because the kids are back in school, and the reason, you might wonder, what does that have to do with anything? Is it because you have more time or something? No, it has nothing to do with that. If any of you have seen my, why I like musket and tomahawks video, a big part of my initial attraction to the genre is the fact that the French Indian War period and learning about the First Nations in sort of the New York, greater New York area on the East Coast. I mean, all of that stuff was stuff from when I was in like elementary school, junior high, things like that. We learned a lot about that stuff then. So it was a bit of a part of my youth and in school. And now with the school year starting, with the cold snap, for some reason I always start thinking about this genre. And, I take breaks and do all kinds of different games, but really this is a cornerstone gaming area for me, is the French Indian War area. And so I have some models in front of you that I have had for quite some time. I actually also have, you can't quite see it here, but a canoe. So I have a friend had given me these, and quite some time ago. Now, I think part of it was they were just focusing on a different line of miniatures where they know that I like the Conquest miniatures, which is what these are from. These are not even primed yet. All I've started to do is clean them up and put them on their bases, and I haven't even plastered the bases yet or anything. So they do have a leader model, so I'll have an extra leader model. Now this, I believe, was marketed as the original miniature from Crusader for Magua, who's in Last of the Mohicans. Now, they did later, or at one point, do a Last of the Mohicans set that had a character that portrayed Magua and was directly the sculpture of the actor's face, and so he does not look like, directly like the actor from the movie nearly as much. But really nice model nonetheless, really nice looking leader sort of model, and so I'm always happy to have more sachems, and so I will add him to the ranks of various sachems. I am actually planning on using a recent book that I did show on the channel that was for Native American dress, and I'm going to do these as Huron, and I do have another box of natives in the future that I'll be doing as Huron as well. For those of you that remember, I did my initial natives as Iroquois and also as Delawares, and so since I have lots of native models, I thought I'll actually do a large group of Huron, because I bought the Delawares specifically, the Conquest Delawares, but I have a smaller number of them, and really you could use them as Eastern or Western Delawares, and they could ally with either your British or excuse me, well, your British or your French or your Iroquois or your Huron or Ottawa. You could go either way. Now, I even think that the other box I have are meant to be Ottawa, but I'm going to do them, I think, as Huron. So I have not put together my canoe, but I do have 2 natives that will go into a canoe. Now this is a 2-person canoe. It's a smaller canoe than the wood ones that I had purchased. I have a really large one and then one that's like maybe 1.5 to 2 times the size of this. I was thinking about this, and I think that what I'm most excited about and maybe using this for is I think I'm going to make a deployment point for a native forest for sharp practice. So I'm going to use this canoe with the 2 natives as if it's sort of coming ashore onto, you know, a riverbank, and use that as a deployment point. And I might even do some more deployment points at one point, but I am also looking at doing British and French flags for deployment points, just for stuff, you know, for the game sharp practice as well. But now, one of the things that is really cool, because it stands out as something I don't have currently painted, is I have 6 natives with bows. So all of these ones are primarily using bows. They have some hand weapons and things too, so I'll be able to use and feature them in the game. Now, for those of you that have watched some of the battle reports from last year, we had featured some natives with bows on the channel. They were never in my forces. I was going against them. I did have some very significant observations when using natives in musket and tomahawks with bows, and I am going to do my second, because I don't do these often, but I did one earlier, a tactical musket and tomahawks video that just focused on a tactical discussion, and I am going to actually do a tactical discussion in the future around the use of missile or bow weaponry and musket and tomahawks, and my thoughts on that from a tactical perspective. And so we'll be doing that in the future as part of painting these up. Will come that video as a result as well. Now, I do also have some natives that have muskets and rifles and things. Now, for the most part, these are Conquest miniatures that I don't have, but there were a couple that I did already have, and I'm at least in the ones that I painted already. Now, I'm thinking that I think it's these 2. Perhaps, that I already have. But that's fine. I'm going to paint them up as Ottawa, and no, it's perfectly fine. I've mentioned this before on the channel, but as much as my preferred company is Minden, that I like personally for my miniatures for French Indian War, they're technically made for 7-year war, but it was essentially the same time period of the world happening at the same time. So the British Army at that time was the British Army at that time, as long as the models don't directly contradict the setting. It was no issue for me. And so I'm planning on getting more Minden actually in the future and painting more to bulk out my forces further, particularly to round out some of my for my sharp practice games, because I can play now sharp practice, but I struggle to build forces. I have barely enough. Really, I just have primarily enough for the French. I don't have enough British to play. But unless I use a lot of natives, I don't really have enough for like an actual total British force. So what I was rambling and sort of digressing from is that I have always really liked and enjoyed the character on the Conquest natives. Yeah, and it's just, I guess I'm lucky because I bought the Conquest first for both British, French, or British and, British, French with the French Marines and natives. And in particular, the native line has always been my favorite out of those 3. And I've really loved some of the character in the features. And so I'm really happy to be painting some more of them again, because I really do enjoy these miniatures. So I was quite happy to get more of them when my friend offered them. So that will be what I'll be doing for natives. Now, I'm also, since I finished my tower, going to start the Charlie Foxtrot models manor that I had purchased and put together beginning of the year. Now, it sort of kills me that I put this together, but I never got around to it. But I just always had like lots of things going on, so I built it, did a review, but I've not, and I planned on doing it a lot sooner, and so every time I'd see it on my shelf, it'd sort of kill me that I was not painting it. So I'm really looking forward to now painting this manor. Now, I've thought about this, and I've went back and forth so many times on how I'm going to do this. Sorry. I'm going to... Cheers, everybody. Have another sip here. So, the most obvious thing for me to do would be to paint this as a white sort of governor's house. Something that you would be very typical to see of a house of this size and stature. It's how the Charlie Foxtrot models pictures, on its actual website show it as painted, and how I typically have seen the couple of people that I've seen paint it would paint it that way. Now, I've used white on a number of buildings that I've painted so far, although because I've done it so much, I have started switching to other colors, and many of you from Battle Reports might remember that I have like a yellow sort of townhome that's yellow and black, primarily with like a green door. Well, it's funny, when you look back, if you go to historical villages, or if you look at pictures, oftentimes when you look at these periods, these colonial periods in time, they occasionally have these like colored houses that are painted a color other than white, because white is admittedly very common. And sometimes you'll just see something like an interesting blue with like a red door, and maybe even a colored roof or something, but you see these sort of interesting color palettes that were chosen at the time. I'm going to attempt, because I have snatched a picture over the course of the last 6 months of something that kind of inspired me. And I'll show it up in the top right-hand corner now if I can find it. If not, I apologize if I wasn't able to find it, but I think I should be able to. And the kind of... I mentioned blue because that's kind of what's on my mind. I'm thinking I'm going to go with sort of not a baby blue and not a dark navy blue, so not the two extremes, but sort of a rich, vibrant blue that you would see on some of these houses in that colonial time period, and maybe have like a red door, and then go with something like, because I don't want to lose the beautiful features that they show here, all of these details coming through. So I'm looking at doing those and the shutters and things as either white or black, and likely a black roof with sort of gray weathering in the shingles. And so I'm thinking I'm going to do something like that. I'm actually interested in what you guys think, whether you think I should... You see, I feel like, to me, this is very much a centerpiece model for the table. And so it's a great model. Really big, will be excellent for any game of Musket and Tomahawks or Sharps practice. And so I kind of thought, should I just do it as my gut instinct tells me, in the sense of just go white and do like a nice governor's mansion and it just will fit, like just, black shutters, black roof, white, or something like that, or even like a cedar sort of roof with the browns? Or should I kind of take a chance and try to do something a little different in that case, and something that I haven't done so far, something that'll be interesting on the table, like with all the other different colors and things. And so I'm leaning towards going for the blue. And as I mentioned, I'm thinking maybe cedar shake too. Maybe blue with the cedar shake and a red door. Just something different. Now I'd probably do either like black shutters and maybe white window frames and white for the details. Is what I'm thinking, possibly. Maybe even, because there's a lot of details, and I probably will still put those in a way that they'll stand out, because I don't want to lose that. I want to really highlight the beautiful details in this kit. I have in my product review section, if you're interested, I go over this kit in much greater detail and looking at the kit and talking about it, and that is in my playlists under product reviews. So yeah, I'm really excited to work on this now, as well as part of my doing some French Indian War stuff at this time of the year. And then really just to sort of break topic a little bit, while I'm getting all of this stuff prepped, because I am going to seal the MDF kit with a finish before I prime. Why I do that? Because although I hear many people say that it never affects them, I find that when I use spray primers and all kinds of water-based paints on MDF, that I do at times get swelling. I also sometimes get a little bit of, on like the flat walls on the interior, I'll get like irregular patterns of paint where the paint almost is not a smooth finish because of what I appear to be swelling of fibers. And so I've gotten better success since sealing with a polyurethane quick dry clear coat, and so that's what I'll be doing. So I'll do that. I'm going to finish cleaning up these miniatures, putting on the the plaster that I use for these typically, get these guys ready and primed. And while I'm doing all that, I'm going to just do a little bit of painting, and it's going to be of the miniatures for Savage Core that I've already shown. I'm going to paint the two Neanderthals, and I'm going to paint the Atlantean. And so I'll be starting painting these right away, just while I'm doing all the other stuff that's sort of time consuming to prep all that other stuff and get it ready. So, very excited about that stuff. And we will now go back to the chat. Hey everybody, so back at the chat. Now, I probably have taken a little bit more time today just with my normal things that are just my table update and my sponsored alcohol for the evening are usually just side things in some ways, even though this is a miniature painting channel. The table update is to sort of at least once a week show what I'm up to at that moment, unless I'm absolutely doing nothing. And usually there always is a table update. But today, because of its tie with the history component and my love of the French Indian War stuff, announcement of kind of focusing on that for the next period of the timeline on the channel, I thought I'd just kind of do it as a full-blown topic. So I really only have one more topic left. But before I do go into it, I did want to thank those that last week provided lots of information on the Rockefeller photo and just provided input either from their past experience with photo development or processes in printing, or even the research that they've done. So you guys know who you are that helped out. I really appreciated that because it really was helpful for me. There were a couple of things I was very wrong on. I, based on the video last week, was really thinking that photo was potentially a photo from before 1969, like because of the dates and when it said it was filed and things. But really, I was kind of illuminated to understand that just because a photo is taken at an earlier time, it had, because it's a press photo, they can always pull that, and that likely when they say it is 1969, it is 1969 when the photo was printed from the original negative and things like that. And so it was kind of helpful, and I even got other tidbits of information which were really helpful involving Rockefeller at that time. So, This next topic is a topic of real interest to me. I mentioned villains in cinema. Now, that might have been a little misleading because what I'm going to focus on are Marvel villains. Marvel movies, Marvel cinema, comic books, villains. And the reason I'm going to do that is because you guys know I'm a Marvel nut. You also probably have figured out by now that, like a lot of people, I love movies, but I consider myself very much a cinema connoisseur in the areas that I delve into, like things like science fiction and things like that. I really do enjoy those movies quite a bit. I also really like dramas and other kinds of movies, independent films and foreign films. And so I kind of take my movies seriously. I even considered at one point doing a separate YouTube channel on it, but I think it's a little much. I think I'm kind of stretching myself with this one, so I think I'll have to leave it to my Heresy Hump Day chats. Now, I'm a Marvel nut and I'm a movie nut, and today I want to talk about villains, but I'm going to focus specifically on Marvel villains. Now, villains for me and like antagonists, are really, of course, incredibly important in films, and particularly with comic book films, they're even have a higher level of importance for me, and can oftentimes really dictate whether it puts that movie over the top. It's excellent. Now, I am a Marvel fan. I'm not a huge DC fan, but I'm willing to admit that like Heath Ledger's performance of the Joker in Batman was just incredible, and Batman 2, or the one with Heath Ledger in it versus the origin was amazing, very much because of the Joker and what Heath Ledger brought to the table in that film. And so, translating that to the Marvel universe, I have up until recently, there's been one Marvel villain that has stood out head and shoulders above everyone else in cinema for me. I'm going to let you guys think, take a guess. Because if you can honestly put in the comments that you've guessed this one, I'll be very surprised. Not because I think that I'm the only one that has this opinion or whatever, or anything like that, or you guys don't see this as well. It's just that the movie, and I'm going to kind of give it away a little bit, is the movie that he's from is not regarded as one of Marvel's best movies. But he happens to be, up until now, clearly above all other Marvel villains for me. The actor and the acting and just the performance. So, drum roll. Who it is, yes, it is Mickey Rourke, Whiplash, Iron Man 2. Got it, for me, up until recently, clearly uncontested best Marvel villain whatsoever. Now, essentially, you've got this guy. For those of you, there are going to be spoilers in this chat. I apologize, but there's going to be spoilers. So I'll let you know that I'm talking about Iron Man 2 now. So that's an old movie, by today's standards. I mean, it's around many years at this point. So I'm hoping that you've either seen it or you don't mind hearing about it because you haven't seen it yet. He's basically plays a Russian scientist slash criminal. He lives in sort of the underworld within Russian society, but his dad was somebody that actually worked with Tony Stark and was never really given recognition for what he did to, I believe, help create the arc reactor that powers Iron Man's armor, the concept originally, but also just in general. He was somebody that never got recognition or credit. So right off the bat has a long-standing issue with the Stark family, but also living a very sort of different life in the sense that he's, kind of living a little, pretty much in the underworld within Russian society, still has these connections with his dad, with being scientists. He's sort of the prodigy underneath his dad, sort of like how Tony Stark is the prodigy under his own father, as far as technology goes. And so there's these dichotomies here, but then also you really see the humanness of Mickey Rourke playing this character Whiplash. they show at one point where his father passes away, and of course you see the the heart-wrenching aspect of that. You just see how they're just sort of people that envy the Starks because like they had potential for greatness, but are obviously not having a manifestation of that in their lives. So fast forward, you have this guy that he's drinking, and his father died, and he feels this vendetta. Well, he's going to essentially try to get a piece for himself out of life, and the way he does that is to try to take it out of Tony Stark. Now, up until that point, like, they do all this character building, and then eventually, boom, Whiplash is on the scene, and he is like smiling, like coming out of nowhere, surprising Tony, Iron Man, in the middle of a raceway, like at one of his events, just unexpectedly out of nowhere, and essentially cutting cars in half, bringing Iron Man to his knees with basically an arc reactor, just channeled differently in a different technology. But he's literally wrapped his like electrified whips around Iron Man, brought him to his knees, is just ripping apart everything, cutting race cars in half. Like, people are screaming, they're like, what's going on? And he's like, I'm here. And he's like, I'm here, and I'm here, and I'm doing this in front of the world. To show you that you're not as good as you think you are. You're not invincible. Here I am. Now, of course, he's sort of the inventor type. He gets kind of captured immediately. Like, you might think that wasn't the greatest thing to do, like, just get caught like that. But he doesn't care. He literally, at one point in the movie, like, when Tony sees him, he spits in his face, and he laughs, and he tells him, this is what I did to you. Like, now everybody knows you're not invincible. So, fast forward, Justin Hammer, Tony's rival in the industry, also kind of a villain, sees this immediately as an opportunity. Not only does he give Whiplash the ability to get out of prison, but he does it in such style that he basically puts this guy that looks like him in a cell with him with the same uniform, basically saying, one of you two are coming out of here. If you're half as good as I think you are, you should be able to deal with this. So, Whiplash has to essentially kill this guy, who's like his double, in the prison cell with his bare hands. So he's a genius, but he also needs to be much more than that, probably according to Justin Hammer, to be able to work with him. So passes the test, and there we go. I'm not going to go too much more into the movie itself beyond that, but one of the things that's really important to me for a villain in a movie, particularly in a comic book movie, is that even if the character, like, you have to really like the character because of the movie. Like, you can't just like the character because of the comic book that you read. Whiplash is a perfect case example. He was in the comics for Iron Man. I mean, he usually was with other guys, like Blizzard and other villains, but he was never a standout character in my mind. They were in multiple issues against Iron Man, but never really somebody that stood out. In my opinion, Mickey Rourke took that character, that villain, and made it transcend to be better than it ever was. So, am I a purist? You guys know I love... Iron Man was like my #1 favorite as a kid character before he was in cinema, before he was considered to be like as good as he is now. I loved him. Like, a lot of people did too, but he was a favorite, hands down. Yet, this Whiplash character, I can admit, was not a standout character, as a villain within the comics. But Mickey Rourke, Iron Man 2, kicked that up so many notches above where he was. And so that's why, up until recently, Mickey Rourke as Whiplash was like my favorite villain in Marvel cinema. Well, so I said up until recently. So who is actually potentially changed that? Who is as good or better than Whiplash? Well, that is Michael Keaton as the Vulture. Amazing. So if you guys haven't watched, many of you probably have not watched Spider-Man Homecoming, the recent movie. If you guys think, I'm not going to spoil what happens in the movie, like the actual who beats who and like what happens and things like that. But I am going to reference Michael Keaton in the Vulture from the movie, so if you guys don't want to watch it, you're welcome to stop the video. So Michael Keaton as the Vulture, amazing, truly amazing. Michael Keaton, tagging off of where I just went with Whiplash, is he actually took a Spider-Man character, the Vulture, who was never really that cool. I mean, so when I was a little kid, like 5 to like 7, 8, like Spider-Man was number 1. And then when I started actually reading comics, Iron Man became my favorite through my adolescence. So I still have a soft spot, and as you know, I still was doing that Spider-Man board for the Marvel game. I love Spider-Man. But the Vulture, I mean, the visuals are great. I mean, like, he was the Vulture. I love the green costume with the white, frill, and like he's an old-time character. Nostalgia reasons, he's great. But the Vulture, the winged old man, was never like the best Spider-Man villain. I mean, he was never anything compared to Dr. Octopus or the Green Goblin or anything like that. He's not even in the same realm as those guys. Yet, Michael Keaton has taken that character. Yes, they re-envisioned him a bit. Yes, he's kind of got now a robotic suit and things like that. But it was so cool. It was so cool because they paid homage to the original character with the sort of like sheep's wool, like kind of white interior of the jacket that kind of was circling his neck, just like the old Vulture costume. So that was a very cool thing. But they made the character just so much better. So in a lot of ways, like Whiplash, they had a very believable character that had a very cool story. So he was a guy that was just sort of like a contractor, really trying to make ends meet, was a family man, but blue collar, like solid blue collar, working in New York City, got a contract to clean up, tied to the Avengers movie, cleaning up wreckage still from the destruction that happened that is linked to the first Avengers movie. And, they're basically kind of squashing him down, the government regulators are basically coming in and saying, like, we're taking this over, like, you can't do this, and he's basically going to lose money on this job, and so he's really pissed. Well, they do find some artifacts that help his crew that are related to the alien species that came through, and so he basically sees an opportunity and takes it. Now, so this is a guy that's sort of disadvantaged, in the sense feels disadvantaged, because he's like sort of the blue-collar guy trying to make ends meet, and the sort of upper crust government stiffs or whatever are coming in and basically getting in his way and kind of trying to keep him down. And so that's sort of a big part of this guy, and he's obviously resourceful, he's obviously a bit of a smart guy, like kind of like the inventor type. I wouldn't put him up there with Whiplash and creating arc reactors and things, but he's definitely resourceful, very resourceful. And so they create a guy that's got a lot of passion, and right off the bat, a bit of a mean streak because of what's happened to him, and it's created a real excellent platform for Michael Keaton to channel the sinister predatory nature of the Vulture, both animal and the character. And so, I was really, really impressed. I've not had the years to process it in the way that I have with Whiplash, but I do feel that it was the best performance of a Marvel villain by far since Mickey Rourke's Whiplash. And I really hope we see him again in future films. They've set it up such that it could really go either way. The only way I'd really think that we would see Whiplash, or the Vulture again in the Spider-Man movies, is if the series does so well that they end up bringing back like the Sinister Six, where they actually have like multiple villains together. Like usually it was Dr. Octopus that brought the Sinister Six together, but there were others too. But I could see that happening. That would be really the only way. Overall, I think it would be a really big cast. I'm not sure if they could afford it, having that many big names, because they'll bring in good actors for all of these movies. So could be a bit difficult. I don't know what else to say other than that Michael Keaton is just, both Mickey Rourke and Michael Keaton bring a feeling of realism and danger to their villain roles. A lot of times, like, you can have like Ronan the Destroyer from Guardians of the Galaxy. I kind of liked him. He was kind of funny. Like, he was supposed to be funny, but he was also, like, inordinately powerful. Even prior to getting the artifact that he had, like the stone, he was very, it's a space adventure, like Guardians of the Galaxy. That everything's kicked up a notch in the power levels of the story. But really, like, even the fact that he was, like, so powerful and tough, like, he didn't, like, scare you. Michael Keaton, in particular, like Michael Keaton, when they would go close up to his face and when you'd see the way he needed to react to things, you felt like he could snap, like, at any moment. Like, you'd be watching, like, I wouldn't say I was, like, scared, like a horror movie, but there's a tension that when you're seeing him act as that character, like, you don't know what he's going to do. And you really got a sense of that in the film. It really was impressed upon me. He felt like a dangerous guy. He felt like a desperate guy, and smart, resourceful, dangerous, and desperate, all together in one. And you had, like, Michael Keaton as the Vulture. And so, definitely check it out if you haven't seen Spider-Man 2. It was amazing. I loved it. Amazing Spider-Man. And honorable mention. A lot of people, I think, when you talk about the best performance in a Marvel film, may mention Loki. From the Thor movies, from the Avengers. Gentleman that played the character, very good acting, very convincing, wonderful choice for Loki. I really liked it. I really liked the trickery, the subtleness, the whole Game of Thrones aspect of Loki. Did it really well. I don't know what else to say beyond that. I mean, like, I was very entertained. I give him an honorable mention. Just for me personally, does not touch the other two in what I look for in a villain in the movie. It's hard because sometimes, like, Ultron was also very cool, even though it wasn't played by, like, there wasn't, it was a robot, so it was just voice acting and cinematography, but, like, Ultron was a very cool villain. I was really impressed with it in the second Avengers. There are some times when you have to create characters that fit a very specific role that's very difficult to bring out the best of the acting of someone. I wouldn't say that about Loki. I thought he did a very good job. It's just the combination of the story and the villainous nature of what I'd be looking for and things. It just isn't of the same level of the other two for me. But also, I do understand why he's gotten such great reviews and will likely always come back in that role as long as they're doing it, and he's willing to do the part. Yeah. So, I really have no idea how long, as usual, I've gone for. I'm hoping it is about an hour in total. Could be less. I'm guessing it might be less. But that is my impassioned discussion on villains in cinema, Marvel villains in particular, and my hobby update, and a talk a little bit about the Scotch today. So, hope you guys enjoy this chat, maybe while you're painting, and I will talk to you guys next week. Take care.